Welcome to another edition of the Executive Lounge with me, Inshira Ado. This is your business thought leadership program that brings you nuggets of wisdom from the experiences of men and women who have scaled the daunting height of starting, managing, and growing businesses across different sectors here at home and around the world. My guest today is a man who's seen it all. He's done banking, marketing, communications, management consultancy. He's even worked in broadcasting. He currently heads the Dun & Bradstreet Credit Referencing Bureau here in Ghana and in Tanzania. Welcome to the Executive Lounge at Adebowale, Atobatele.
Fantastic.
It's good to catch up with you.
Same here.
You've done quite a lot of things. Is this how you intended it to be?
Well, you know, you never predict the journey. I actually set out to be an ambassador, to be in the diplomatic field. And that informed, me studying political science in school, undergrad. But, after undergrad, I figured there was a lot more. I needed to broaden my perspective. And then I decided to do something in business. I went for an MBA, and I said if I was going to do an MBA, it was going to be a top 100 business school. And somehow, life presented me with that opportunity, and I plugged into it. And that opportunity took me from nowhere to somewhere.
Fantastic stuff. So you then, at some point, tried your hands at broadcast journalism
interesting.
in the media.
Interesting. So immediately after high school, the president of the press club and myself, because I was very active in the press club, writing articles, we tried to float a program on TV, African Independent Television. We're still very new then, 96. So between 96 and 1999, we tried but got nothing. We got the pilot shot. It was very successful. People liked it. It was going to be the biggest and the best youth TV show. But I just felt like some people thought, who these kids coming up with ideas that they haven't thought about. So, due to some internal politics at the AT, then we couldn't get it on air. But somehow life works in interesting ways. I was at home in 2000, taking a nap, and a friend came and called and said one other friend needed my help with his radio show, and I went in there to assist him. And as I was leaving that Friday evening, the producer of the show called me back and said, "Hey, look, there's another show that I really would like to have you on." And that's how I got on Today's Youth on Star FM. And, shortly after that, I found myself on TV, and it went on like that for 2 years. And by then I was in university. I was approaching my final year, and it was important that I focus. So I, had to stop that and focus on studies and, ensure that I graduated from school. And it was so good because by the time I graduated, the very week I graduated, I got a job in a PR firm. And, from the PR firm, I had a stint with a marketing communications company, an integrated marketing communications company, where I served as business development manager. And, we had content developed. And we had to go sell, and sometimes you had to research the market, and think out relevant content that could be marketed to them. So I was very involved in that, and in a very short time we recorded success, and I said, okay, you know what, there's something else to do, and that thing was to to eat the advice of my dad, who would always insist that I should get a job in the bank. But I was quite stubborn then. I didn't want to work in the bank. I didn't think that working in the bank was for me, because I didn't like the way banking was done in Nigeria. And people running around looking for depositors, and all of that. I thought it wasn't as prestigious as we're made to believe. But anyway, so I gave into the pressure from home, and I took a job in the bank. And, you know, thinking back, I don't regret it, because that prepared me for life after MBA. And, you know, and I'm really grateful for my time in the bank, because within a very short time, I learned a whole lot. You know, the bosses I had exposed me to a whole lot. You know, and I was there to soak in as much as I could. I remember, you know, we're doing some work, some recovery work at the branch, and you know, I had to figure out how to get a whole lot of people. We had about 300 debtors allocated to me. So what I did was to write to the employers, you know, to get their staff to go and pay. Now, in the middle of all that chaos, something remarkable happened. One of the guys who was indebted to the bank came and saw the way I was walking aggressively, and at a point he saw that I sank into my seat, and I was a little bit unhappy, because I thought I had too much to do, and my peers, you know, my colleagues at the office weren't actively involved, and I was the one trying to sort out things. You know, I really took the bull by the horn. You know, he looked at me, that gentleman looked at me and said, you know what, I can see that you're worried that you're the only one doing the work. I said, don't worry about others not joining you. Where you're going is different from where they're going. And he said, mark my word, it's only a matter of time. You'll look back and you won't regret it. You know, so you know, I'm looking for that guy, by the way. I need to write him a check.
That's right.
Because he was right. You know, because, you know, right after MBA, the story changed.
So you bowed to pressure from your father.
Yeah.
Let's take a trip back to growing up. What kind of influence do you think you had at home? What was life like?
Life was, as a child, you know, I was an only child for 6 years. And that was good.
They doted on you for a bit, huh?
Man, that was good, because, you know, I had my birthday celebrated every year. We didn't miss the party. You know, but, you know, I'm really grateful to my parents, my dad in particular, for, you know, emphasizing that I had the right educational foundation. I remember, you know, he and my mom arguing or, you know, discussing about my education. And he kept saying, I don't care what school you take him to, the standard mustn't drop. You know, so I appreciate him for that. And the fact that I grew up in a very spiritual home. You know, we would pray in the morning and the evening, you know, in a very Christian home. So that, you know, helped me develop a sound moral compass. And, you know, like the Bible says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's grown, he will not depart from it. I can say that I am a, you know, living testimony of that scripture. Because, you know, a couple of times you tend to deviate from the right path, but that moral compass within you will always draw you back home. Say, look, you know, come back to the center. You know, you've got a purpose to fulfill, and here we are.
How did you get a sense of focus early in life? Because you talked about having to let go of the media journey that you had started because you were in the final year.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to choose whether you'd focus on the education or bask in the adulation of the many fans that you were having on TV
that's true, because it was pretty tricky, you know, but, and you know, you tend to fall the trappings of the media, the attention of the public. You walk into a restaurant, you can have a meal and you don't pay, and they tell you, you know, it's on the house.
I pay for everything.
Yeah, you know, you know, one could easily have gotten sucked in, but simple is more important. Graduating from school and starting life myself, that was more the driving force. You know, not having to depend on my folks for anything. That was a huge driving force for me. And I knew that I needed to take that off and pursue what I really wanted, which was to be, you know, to be an ambassador. Which again, you know, I don't think is lost in a way, because, you know, whatever brand I work for, I carry myself as an ambassador for that brand. So all isn't lost. But, talking about focus, when I was young, my dad took me to a tennis camp. And I'll never forget this. This really shaped my life. I'm sure if my colleagues in EcoBank who were there with me in 2008 are watching, they'll probably remember me, when I talk and, when we do trainings and I have to speak to my team. Two things I learned from my coach, Innocent. That was his name, a tennis coach. Mm-hmm. First two rules he gave me. He said, life is like you're about to play tennis. Number one, you've got to be alert. You've got to be alert to see when the ball is coming. So be prepared. And number two, eyes on the ball, so you don't miss the ball. So when we got used to the first rule and I mastered the first rule and I was always alert and, I had, very sharp reflexes. I could turn left to right. The next rule that he gave to me was eyes on the ball, and then he will cough the ball sometimes. And then I will miss it sometimes. And, just that or those two rules have kind of informed or shaped my approach to life, being prepared and staying focused. So when you talk about staying focused and, being caught in between graduating from school and, enjoy the intention of being on TV and radio, I didn't need an angel to come tell me I needed to graduate. It was important to stay focused. That was the right thing to do. Get past that and pursue other things. And that's what I did.
Awesome. Now, you talked about your home being a very well-grounded home that shaped your moral compass. What one thing can you look back on and say, this one mantra or principle or value was instilled in me from home, and that's something you still hold on to now?
Well, it's just simple. You never can do anything by yourself. There is God. Or, to some people, there's a higher power. Because you never can achieve anything by yourself. People say you got self-will or whatever. As a human being, there's only so much you can achieve by yourself. Your self-will or whatever you call it, but you don't create opportunities that come to you. There is a higher power, a higher force that directs certain opportunities your way. Mm-hmm. I call that force God. Some other people may call it whatever, their higher self or whatever, but I call it God. And, so basically you achieve nothing by yourself. You've got to put God first and everything will follow. So that one thing has kept me, really grounded in life. That no matter how far or how high you go in life, there is a God who reigns in the affairs of men, who lifts up the humble and pulls down the arrogant.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, let's take a break on that note. If you just joined us, this is the Executive Lounge, and we're going to go on a short break. When we come back, we'll be hearing more from Mr. Adebowale Atobatele. He is the Managing Director, or General Manager for Dun & Bradstreet Credit Referencing Bureau here in Ghana as well as Tanzania. And he shared some fantastic thoughts with us. You can catch a replay of this episode on our YouTube channel. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to the Executive Lounge with me, Inshira Ado, and my guest, Adebowale Atobatele. He is the General Manager of Dun & Bradstreet Credit Reference Bureau here in Ghana and in Tanzania. And he's been sharing some very interesting thoughts with us. Talked about how, upbringing gave him a moral compass, and two things he learned at tennis camp, which is first off, to be alert and be prepared for anything that comes your way, and also keep your eye on the ball, which means focus. So, you wanted to be an ambassador, ended up in banking. Yeah. You've worked in Nigeria, you've worked in Brunei, you've worked mostly in EcoBank when you were doing banking.
Yeah, just EcoBank.
And currently you've also shuttling between Ghana and Tanzania.
Yeah.
I'm curious to learn what it's been like having to adjust in different environments, different cultures, different kinds of people. Yeah. How do you get your teams to work well?
First of all, I've always considered myself a global citizen. So from a very young age, I would want to learn about different people, different cultures. And I would, you know, when I had access to the internet, I would just Google countries and, you know, try to understand how they think or try to understand how they live in those areas. You know, sometime in 2003, I was selected to represent Nigeria at the African Youth Parliament. And that brought together over 300 youths, young people from Africa. And, you know, there are countries you only read about on the map. You know, that afforded me an opportunity to meet them one-to-one. So you're talking Lesotho, Swaziland, Eritrea. You know, I heard about South Sudan then, you know, and that further expanded my mind and prepared me for future assignments. So when I got posted to Brunei, it wasn't really difficult adjusting. When I had the opportunity to go to Qatar, because I lived in UAE, it wasn't that difficult. And then returning to Africa, going to Tanzania, I felt like I was amongst my people. You know, there's nothing different, because at the end of the day, we all look the same. We're all the same. That's right. You know, it's the same Bantu. You know, same names, A, E, O, U, same way we pronounce words, same syllables, right? So I felt at home. And, you know, and I had the daunting task in Tanzania of starting the company from scratch. And that included raising a team, you know, and, you know, it didn't come easy. It wasn't entirely smooth. You had to look for people who had the right match, who had the skill, but most importantly, who had the right attitude. Because you can teach everything, but attitude you can't teach. And, you know, I once read a book given to me by one of my dad's friends, who was also my mentor. And, oh, by the way, that's one of the good fortunes I had, having access to people older than me at a very early age. So I was able to learn a few things from them. One of the books he gave me talked about attitude and how your attitude determines your altitude.
Sounds like a Zig Ziglar book.
No, it wasn't. It was actually John Maxwell. This book was John Maxwell.
Oh, okay, yeah, John C. Maxwell.
Yeah, and it was about, you know, ensuring that at every point in time you maintain a very positive attitude. You may not you may not be able to determine what happens to you, but you can determine how you react to it, and that's your attitude. So you can teach a whole lot of things, but attitude you can't teach. You know, people have to learn by themselves. So when you find people who have gone through life and, you know, experienced a couple of things and have developed the right attitude, then you want them on your team. You know, they're teachable, they're team players, they're open-minded, they're self-starters, they're result-oriented. Then you want them on your team. The rest, the skill, you can teach. You know, the skill of how to get the job done, you can teach. You can send someone on training. But just having that attitude of, you know what, let's do it, we can do it, we can win, it's hard to find.
Now, across the various cultures, let's look at, so outside of Africa and within Africa, on the continent, do you find that because our cultures may slightly vary, we have different attitudes, generally?
Yes. Look, and here's, at this point, I'd like to refer to Lagos. You know, growing up, one of the things I learned in Lagos is that no one is going to give anything to you. You got to go get it. I mean, think about it. You have an island that is populated by well over 20 million people. We're talking almost 30 million now.
So in that little island, Ghana's entire population.
Ghana's entire population sits on that little island. And you have to drive from Ajah to Victoria Island. We're talking 2007, 2008, when the road had not been expanded, you know, and you had several cars. everyone waking up at 4:30, getting out of home by 5:30, and by 6 o'clock, there's a traffic jam already. And everyone is hurrying up to get to work, to get just that one parking space that you don't have to pay for. That shapes you, that conditions you. To the point where by the time I left Nigeria and I was living in Dubai, I would wake up at 4:30. Why? Because my mind had been conditioned that way. I felt like if I slept till 6 a.m., I was lazy. I felt like I was losing out. And that still shaped me. I remember, when I was in business school then, people would see me at 3 a.m. and they're asking, what is this guy doing awake? But I don't regret that. I'm thankful for that exposure, because all that is what has formed who I am today. So when you talk about cultures influencing how we are and how we react and we behave, 100% true. I once heard someone say that the culture of the people determines the strength of a civilization. Mm-hmm. Absolutely true. So when you build a culture that that accommodates or tolerates insolence, a culture that tolerates laziness, people will naturally not be challenged to do anything. They expect the state to do it for them. They expect the state, to pay for their school. They expect the state to pay for their health care and everything. But when you come from a culture where you're taught to get up, go get it. If you want it, go get it. Then you realize, your destiny is in your hands and not in the state's. Not in anyone else's. And that seems to be the only difference that I see in the way Africans live. Some cultures are driven by, due to societal factors. You live in an environment where if you snooze, you lose. And some are in an environment where they grow up in a socialist state. They have nothing to worry about, or they're made to believe they have nothing to worry about. And that shapes them, and that influences the civilization of the people there.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You talked about having access to people who are older than you. In being able to adjust to these new environments that you found yourself in at one point or the other, you clearly have mentioned that attitude is important to you.
Yeah.
How much of the mentorship that you received made these new environments more tolerable for you?
Yeah.
And how often did you have to sometimes fall back on some support?
Well, mentorship is extremely important. Extremely important, because your mentor will teach you what you never knew that you didn't know. You're thinking, okay, I've done this, I know that. I've done this, I know, I don't. But your mentor will expose you to things that you never knew that you didn't know. And that has been the situation with me, that's been my story. I have a group CEO in Dun & Bradstreet for the credit bureaus who's been a fantastic mentor, Miguel Genes. Not just him alone, other people within the company who have been very supportive of a young general manager like myself. And sometimes, without necessarily going to ask them questions, you just sit down and listen to them talk about their past experiences or the mistakes they made or what they could have done better. Then you learn one or two things that you could apply to your life. And I've had some mentors that I haven't met. I'm yet to meet. They've mentored me through their books or through their art. In the sense that they're movie actors. One of the films that made a really big impact on me growing up was the movie Kingdom of Heaven. Where, talking about...
That's very deep.
Yeah, very deep. Talking about virtue. That you're to speak the truth always, to be without fear in the face of adversity, to be brave and upright, so that God will love you, to speak the truth always, even if it leads to your death. to safeguard the helpless and live your life righteously, that you do no wrong. So that to me was mentorship. Interestingly, last night I still went back to watch that section of the movie where Berlin took his oath as a knight. Because in some way, it just instills in me that mindset of not being afraid, pursuing whatever you're sure is right, speaking the truth, standing up for those who cannot speak for themselves, defending the helpless, being there to help those who are weak, the old, the sick, the vulnerable. And so mentorship for me hasn't been limited to an individual that I run to. I hardly go to anyone to seek advice. I just listen. I observe. And that has been my story, and it has helped.
So for you, you're able to draw inspirations, lessons from, and guides from things around you.
Oh, yeah.
How did you become so observant?
Well, one of my my dad's closest friend, Dr. Femi Bangboye, bless you wherever you are, sir. Should be in the States now. When I was young, he gave me a book called The 7 Laws of Life, written by Deepak Chopra. And I learned a few things there. One of the things that I learned, one line I remember very well, was that if we stay still and stay observant, life will speak to us. The preacher in the church that I usually attend in Lagos will often say that a miracle is walking towards you, walking past you. And if you just stay in a place of stillness, where you submit to life, and your eyes will open, your mind will expand, and you will see what you're supposed to do, or to be made clear to you what you're supposed to do. So I started to pay attention to my environment, because your environment does speak to you. It really does. You're observing, your intuition becomes sharpened, and I miss nothing. Yeah.
As a young business leader, you've had to work with people, some who may be older than you, who may have been in the game longer than you.
Oh, yeah.
How are you able to get these people to see the vision as you see it, more importantly to accept that a younger person is pointing where we're going and commanding the troops forward? Yeah.
It didn't come easy at first. And look, no disregard to anyone, no disrespect to anyone. Sometimes people generally judge you by where you're from. People look at you based on what they know, their past experience of people that are from your place. And as a black person, as a young black person walking outside home, you have to work twice as hard to prove yourself. You've got to be twice as careful not to have anything negative labeled on you. Sometimes you've got to stoop to conquer. And at the right time, life has a way of balancing things out. I don't think that anybody wakes up one day and just finds themselves in leadership. I think that they would have been tested, from time to time, even without them knowing. And life just has a way of setting the tone or establishing what should be. So, finding myself leading people slightly older than me or perhaps the same age hasn't been too much of a challenge. But over time, as you show them that you have superior understanding, but not in an arrogant way, they begin to realize that, okay, hold on a minute, maybe he's right. And then over time, they begin to trust your judgment. Because, look, what separates a leader from everyone else, particularly those who have skill, is just ability to perceive. I'll put it this way. a talented person will hit a target that everyone else could not hit. Everyone else could not have hit the target. The talented guy or the skillful guy will hit it. But a genius will hit a target that no one else perceives, no one else has seen. That's why, you had several scientists when Einstein was there. But he did things because he saw things that other people couldn't see. He had perspective. And that's what really separates a leader from everyone else. That's how you know a leader. When you look at how they analyze issues, they analyze it, they're able to identify where the trouble spots are, and they're able to come up with very unique solutions. Okay, if we tackled A, it'll have a ripple effect that will affect B, C, D, and that's a problem solved. And that's been my case. I wouldn't say that I'm the most talented, but I've had the good fortune and the grace to have my mind open to things that other people probably didn't have their minds open to. And that has helped me. And over time, as I displayed the superior ability to analyze situations, predict the outcomes, I've earned the trust of those I work with.
How important is it for a young business leader to remain a well-rounded, grounded person and not be carried away by the perks of leadership?
Extremely, because the pressure can get to you if you're not careful. The trappings of quote unquote power, that you can hire or fire, but when you realize that your assignment is more of a responsibility to build and not to pull down, a responsibility to inspire. More important is the responsibility to inspire confidence, to give people hope. My job has been just that, to take every task, every leadership opportunity I've been presented with as an opportunity to give back, to help raise someone else as a leader, to help them understand that it's in them. They need not to be micromanaged. They don't need to be told what to do. They actually have it in them to know what to do. My job has been to create the right environment, because I strongly believe that the environment you create determines the product you produce. So if you create an environment that aids productivity, you will it's inevitable. Your team will be productive. I don't micromanage my team. I have never micromanaged my team. And I learned that also from my direct boss, my group CEO. He's never asked me, what are you doing? Why didn't you do it? No. We sit down and he says, so what do you want to do? And I tell him, and he can give me his advice and say, okay, maybe you should try this as well. Or maybe you should put this in there. And that's what I do with my team. I've never sat down to get, I don't stand behind their backs. Okay, you have to do it, because I tell them, if I have to micromanage you, then there's a problem. If I have to micromanage you, there's a very big problem. You're on your way out. All right, but I don't have to do that. And, I'm very thankful. I have fantastic guys here in Ghana, amazing guys here in Ghana, amazing guys in Tanzania. Thumbs up to the team. Because look, we won't be here today. I won't be sitting here today if I didn't have a good team. But I have a team that I can rely on to get things done. And my own boss, my group CEO, knows that he can rely on me to get things done. That's why he put me here. So, I don't know if I've answered your question.
You more than have answered it.
But what's more important is, having that sense of, ownership, having that sense of responsibility, and knowing that you owe it not just to yourself, but to the people around you, to give of yourself, to inspire them to be better, to make your story a story that will, probably make them want to do things better. You make your story the story that would make them want to approach life differently. to take their work seriously, have a plan for their future, have a plan for their kids, have a savings account for the baby the day the baby was born, that kind of thing. So it's been a it's been a privilege, but it's also been a responsibility.
One that you've done with interesting outcomes.
I try.
Yeah.
I think I've just been lucky.
Well, says the man who's very focused and goes after what he desires, keep his eyes on the ball.
Yeah.
It's always an element of luck that's required. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to hit the back straight of this conversation as we get ready to wrap up. And I urge you to stay tuned and catch the takeouts from this conversation. This is the Executive Lounge. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to the Executive Lounge with me, Inshira Ado, and my guest, Mr. Adebowale Atobatele. He is the General Manager for Dun & Bradstreet Credit Referencing Bureau here in Ghana and in Tanzania. We've had a fantastic time. And like I said earlier, if you just missed this and you're just joining, you can catch this on the YouTube channel or the repeat broadcast. This by far has been one of the most engaging conversations we've had on this. I must be honest with you. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about what you do at Dun & Bradstreet.
Yeah.
Credit referencing is kind of new to a society like Ghana. We've not had credit reference bureaus up until recently. Maybe a lot of Africa didn't up until quite recently.
Yeah.
How will that, what's the upside of credit reference bureaus and in the scheme of things as far as Africa's economy is concerned?
Yeah, I will simplify it this way, that before the advent of credit reference bureau in Africa, access to finance, access to credit for productive activities was thought to be the exclusive preserve of the rich. But now that we have credit reference bureaus, every Tom, Dick and Harriet who has a good profile should be able to get access to credit. And not just that, negotiate the interest rate at which credit is given to them or sold to them. So in essence, what we're saying is before we came into the space, before we came into the ecosystem, credit or money from banks or from whatever source was thought of to be something that only the rich could get access to. Right. But now that we have credit bureaus and, with the use of credit reports, everyone should be able to get access to credit, regardless of who they are, regardless of their gender, regardless of their nationality, race, tribe. As long as they have a good credit profile, they should get access to funds, and they should be able to negotiate with the bank the interest rate that they pay.
Fantastic. So, in essence, to my very limited knowledge of the space, any entrepreneur, anyone who's looking to improve their own life, for as long as you have built a good credit profile, you have a chance.
You stand a very good chance. I mean, look, it's just like you have in the Bible where it said the veil has been torn into two. That's what it is. The veil that separated the masses from access to funds has been torn into two. It's been turned top down. And everyone who has a dream, everyone who aspires to be something, everyone who nurses the ambition to run their own business can actually, go to the bank and say, hey, look, you know what, here's my credit report. I've maintained a very clean credit status for the past 4 years. I am starting my own business, and I would like you to support me by selling me credit. And then the bank will make an offer, and then you can negotiate.
Wow. Now, how important is it for individuals? I mean, at the moment you've talked a bit about how it's important for businesses and people who want to start businesses, but how do I build a rating for myself, and will it help my personally or just for business?
Very good. Here's the point that we don't realize in this part of the world. Successful economies today, as we know them, are the way they are because they built a system, a system called credit. That you can graduate from school, get a job today, and that same very day the bank comes and puts a credit card in your hands, maybe $500 limit, at maybe 18 or 22. And by the time you're 25, you've used credit, you've mastered how to control credit, you've mastered how to use credit. By the time you're 25 or even less than that, you're looking to buy a home. And you can buy a home and then you have maybe 30, 40 years to pay. And, you could do several other things as an individual. Now, that's the point that we seem to miss in this part of the world, where we think credit is bad. No. Credit isn't bad. Credit is good if you're responsible with it. I have heard this happened. When I worked in a bank, you hear of people who, for example, some man who got money from the bank, who was supposed to use the money for business. Rather than use it for business, what did he do? He went to marry another wife. Oh yeah.
So that's how you ruin your own credit.
That's how
profile.
Exactly. When people don't use it for what it's intended for. Now that brings me to the point where I would say, as individuals, we must have a very clear idea of what we want to do with money at any point in time. Learning to live within your means. If you take credit, for anyone who hasn't built a credit profile, I would say go take credit, take something very little, and but make sure you repay. Be responsible with it, and over time you realize that as you move ahead on the credit line, money will come look for you. I'll give you an example. I maintain a credit card from one of the banks in the UAE. Some time ago, the bank called me, was looking to double my credit limit. Meaning we want to give you twice as much as we've given you, because we realize, you're very good for business. You've been with us for more than 4 years. You've been consistent with your paying. You haven't defaulted, And I thought about it, but I immediately said, no, I don't need it. If I needed it, I would have said yes, increase my credit limit, but I really don't need it. So that's a discipline aspect. That's a, being responsible aspect of things. So it's very important that as individuals, we begin to build that culture of repaying when we borrow. That culture of being responsible with credit, because at the end of the day, it's not your money. It's the bank's money. Look, in fact, it's not even the bank's money.
It's the shareholders' money.
It's the depositor's money. Because the bank takes on, a very huge responsibility. The banks go out there to raise funds by way of savings, deposits. So they take on a liability and they promise to repay with an interest. No matter how little the amount deposited is, they promise to pay you back an interest. So they take on a liability. Now the bank now has to go look for viable businesses or credit-worthy individuals that it can give money to, and that those people will pay back
also
within the interest that will cover the interest the bank is meant to pay the depositor, that will cover the bank's operating expense, and that will, give some returns
to the shareholders,
to the investors. So if we think of things that way, we will want to be responsible. But people think that, oh, look, they're giving money in that bank, it's free money. No, it's not free money. We all got to be responsible. And if we live that way, if we each, act responsibly with whatever fund we get from the bank or the lender, I think in no little time, our society will be just like those that we aspire to be like, or that a whole lot of our brothers and sisters have migrated to. There's nothing different from this environment. It's just how they've chosen to organize themselves. What stops us from doing the same? The problem with Africa is not resource, it's not people, it's just how we've chosen to organize ourselves. And if we can tackle issues from, how do I put it without sounding too political, if we could tackle our leadership deficiencies, if we could tackle, certain things within our culture that weakens our civilization, if we can tackle our poor approach to managing money, we'll be a whole lot better.
I can imagine so, and see some of the upsides from that. And when you talk about leadership, I think even the concept of leadership amongst, and pardon me for stereotyping, among Africans is of that solitary figure that commands everyone else. But if we can be leaders over ourselves, then we can learn not to go and take a loan from the bank and marry a second wife.
Exactly.
Because someday when you're running the nation, you might end up taking funds that don't belong to you.
Exactly. That's where it starts.
Absolutely.
That's where it starts. And, we talked about the movie Kingdom of Heaven.
That's right.
One of the lines that really inspired me there is, when Billion walked into Ibelin, he saw a sign there that read, or that, said, what man is a man that doesn't make the world better? So, when you take that into your individual context, individual situation, and you ask yourself, what man am I if I do not make my society better? So if I'm taking money from the bank and don't repay, I'm making things worse, because at some point the bank is going to be said to have a high NPL. They're going to lose their operating license. A whole lot of people are going to lose their jobs, and then the country's economy goes through a stress. So if we take on that mindset of being responsible with everything that we've been given, every opportunity, every privilege, we will be a much more better society, much more better continent, much more better people.
Fantastic. I think this is a great point to bring this conversation to a close, because we could talk all day, and we only have a set amount of time. So I'm keeping my focus so we can end this properly. But I must say, it's been a very insightful conversation, very revelatory. Lots of lessons. And I'd say thank you to you.
Thank you too. Thank you for inviting me to your show.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I sign off every episode with the takeouts from this from the conversation, and today's no exception. So here's what I've learned: 5 things. The first thing is that whatever you do, either as a child or as a parent, it's important that you have a moral compass. You must have a center, a moral compass, something that reminds you how to be a well-rounded and grounded individual, whether you're Christian, whether you're Muslim, whatever you believe in. Good is good, and we all know that bad is bad. So you learn the right way to go so that it keeps you centered and guides you along the way. A second thing that I've picked from this conversation also is that there's inspiration all around you, from the movies, from friends, from family, from people's own failures, from people's experiences, from people who are older than you, people who are younger than you, people from maybe a social class a little higher above yours, or equal, or even lower. Everyone has a lesson to teach you. And so the world can be your mentor, and that will set you on a good stead. The third thing I think you can take this to the bank is that wherever you find yourself, whatever team you find yourself working in, make it a responsibility to build people up. Because when you build their confidence, you empower them to do well, and eventually the entire team wins. A leadership position is not one where you subjugate people. It's not one where you sit and lord yourself over people. It's a place of responsibility. You have a responsibility to make the persons or the people who work with you better. And in that process, you would have grown your lot. The fourth thing is also that whenever you find yourself in a place of difficulty, it is not the stimulus that you need to look at. You have to look deep inside and pull out that attitude that says, well, I'm being buffeted by the winds, but I'm going to keep pushing forward. The attitude you develop is going to define how far you can go, because challenges will come whether you like it or not. And finally, be super observant. And I'm going to quote Ade's pastor, who says, miracles are either walking towards you or walking by past you. If you can stay still, if you can take moments to reflect, introspect, and look out for those little things, that the proverbial wind blowing and rustling the winds, it may have a clue for what you need to do next. This has been a wonderful edition, and I'll say again, thank you.
Thank you.
Adebowale Atobatele, General Manager of Dun & Bradstreet Credit Referencing Bureau, Ghana and Tanzania, and also to the entire team, Kuko Apia and the crew, and our friends at Villa Monticello and X-Men Grooming. My name is Inshira Ado, and as always, go forward, make rain, shalom.